Good morning, Year 13, and welcome to our double social diversity section B. Today's our double day. Okay, now it says here we're securing procedural knowledge. In other words, how do I use what I know about the theories, ideas, and concepts in a practical way? So we're just going to come back very quickly in a full circle to where we started at the beginning of this lockdown. You have just completed and handed in to me a question 3, an analysis of how language is used in these two texts from the past paper. So it's going to be a natural process that we're going to go into a question 4. Now, because we started with a question 4, you did an article for me on sexist issues relating to language. There's going to be elements of repetition and familiarity, which means, she says optimistically, that we should get through the preparation for this task quicker to release you to do a response. Okay, now I'm really appreciative of your essays, and I'm sorry that I've got them safe. I just forgot, and I've looked at them. I just forgot to share the marks with you. So I will be getting them back to you today. I do apologise, guys, but I have got them safe. I'm building up a portfolio for each of you of all the essays that you're doing. So we've got that lovely evidence bank. So thank you very much. So number 4 is what we're going to look at today. So we know it's the journalistic task, but just to give us the exact phrasing of the paper, because this is a past paper, write an opinion article on views about accents. In your article, you should assess the ideas and issues raised in text A and B. You should refer to ideas from language study and argue your own views. Okay, brilliant. So what I just want to zoom in on here is this opinion article. Now, because we've been looking at past papers, I just want to make something or draw attention to something really. In text A and B that you would have read and analysed for me last week, one was an extract from an online article, but it wasn't an opinion article. It was an article that was led by that detached kind of biased perspective, that journalism that was at a distance, a Canadian journalist looking into the issue in Britain and offering the information in terms of what other people were saying or suggesting about it. But it wasn't opinion-led. He wasn't a journalist that was shouting or arguing or advocating an opinion. He was looking into a situation from the outside. So you're being asked to write not the same kind of article. Similarly, text B was completely different. It says it was an article, but it was actually about accents within an elocution page, wasn't it? Within a page advertising and selling private tutor services. So again, it was not an opinion article. Now, what that does mean then is that there's an expectation that through the practice we do and the preparation we do in class and across the years, that you know what an opinion article looks like, so that you can draw upon that knowledge from outside of the exam. So as we go through, we will make some distinctions between the different types of articles today. Okay, but fundamentally, we're going to work through these 2 hours to produce the content, the ideas, to do an opinion article on views about accents. Now, in your article, you should assess the ideas and issues raised. Now, if you remember when we looked at this for the first article we did, we're going to at some point plan 5 intentional ways to refer to text A and B. Explicitly, implicitly, but we're going to make sure that we intentionally plan to make at least 5 anchor points to our own article that connect to text A and B. Therefore, I would ask that even though we are looking at our own creative process today, that you have the 2 texts to hand. So there's our text A, and here is our text B. So we've got notes and ideas on them that are going to help us in our planning and prep for our articles today. So I would just ask that you have those close and to hand. However, she says, we're going to go into a retrieval and recap starter that actually is going to look at a 3rd piece of journalism. Okay, so we're going to look at something we haven't analysed, something new. So it's going to be good for us in terms of those wake-up skills of retrieval and recap. Okay, so that practice of AO1 labelling and ascertaining, discerning meaning for AO3. So it says here, social trends, the rise of accent softening, why more and more people are changing their voices, by Daniel Levine, Wednesday, the 20th of March, 2019. We have a photo, and then underneath the photo, we have a caption, Daniel Lavelle with the voice coach, Jamie Chapman. To help me and my thoughts, I have to hand over a plastic spoon every time I arrive at an important word. Photograph, Graham Robertson, The Guardian. Okay, so I just wanted to draw attention to all that information because sometimes, particularly under exam conditions, adrenaline's kicked in. We very quickly bypass the graphological information and go straight into the opening paragraph of the article itself. Now, everything on this page represents what we call graphological information. It is part of the design, the layout, and the form of an article. And from an analysis point of view for a question 3, the expectation is that you absolutely engage with this. How can you understand the context of an article without looking at the points that anchor it, that give it its context? So this gives us the context down here that it's a Guardian article. This gives us a context because now we can work out that one of these will be Daniel Lavelle. One is the voice coach, Jamie Chapman. Here's our headline, The Rise of Accent Softening, Why More and More People Are Changing Their Voices, and other information. So all of this provides context. This is now an online article. We know that because Facebook, Twitter, exactly, taking in the information. This is an online article from The Guardian, even though I've I've cut off the Guardian header. So it's from The Guardian. It's an online article. So your first job, look at the headline. Okay, can you tell me, is it a functional or a creative headline? Is it a functional headline and it's simply telling us what this article is about? Or is there anything about it that's meant to be clever or funny and therefore creative? Give a reason for your answer. Tell me what sentence type and function it is. And what is the topic that's being focused or introduced, or that we're being focused on or introduced to us? But what's the potential point of tension within that topic? Now, I'm not going to lie. It's linked in topic to the two that we've just analysed. So it is a similar topic. So it's just to ask you what's the topic and the tension. Okay, so give yourself, I'm just looking at the time now, I would say 3 ideas in an exam time. You wouldn't want to be looking at a headline for longer than 3 minutes. Probably that's far too generous as it is. So give yourself 3 minutes across the headline. Now this is thinking out loud on paper. You don't need full sentences. You can make notes on your page. Functional, creative, but ready with a reason. Sentence type and function. And what's the point, the topic and the point of tension in this headline? And your 3 minutes starts now. Okay, so let's have a look at this headline. The rise of accent softening, why more and more people are changing their voices. Now, what would you say, functional or creative? I would agree. I think it's functional. There's no puns, there's no metaphors within it. He's not doing a play on words, not using their own accents. So this is what we call the functional headline. Okay, now in opinion writing, often the headlines can be immediately creative. You can see people that immediately kind of inject an anecdotal headline, a creative use of language. But because this isn't quite, it's a personal response, but it's more opinion-led than the other two we've seen, but it's not that overt kind of, I'm really opinionated about this, I'm feeling really strongly about something. So, and give a reason for your answer. So we're going to say it's a functional headline because it's, it's giving the information, it's introducing the topic and the tension, but there is no play, there is no creativity. Okay, so what sentence type and function is it? Now, this will help us double back and really expand our reason why it's functional rather than creative. So let's start with some sentence function. We've got a 1 in 4 chance, guys, of getting this right. Interrogative, declarative, imperative, or exclamatory. Now, we can immediately rule out exclamatory because there's no punctuation. We can immediately rule out interrogative, no punctuation. We could double check it's not an imperative, it's not an interrogative, because the rise of accent softening, this is not a question stem. Okay, so now we've got 2 choices, declarative or imperative. Now, declarative is used to inform, describe, and it must begin with a subject or an adverb or an adjective phrase. it cannot begin with a verb. Imperatives begin with the verb. Declaratives begin with any other sentence starter. So let's have a look then. The rise of accent softening. So the rise, we've got the determiner the, leading us into an abstract noun. Yeah, the rise. It's not a verb. It's not to rise, although it can be a verb if it's used in the right way, because of this the here. This immediately means this sentence begins with a subject, with a noun, and that makes it declarative. So if you've got a declarative, absolutely give yourself a tick. Now, actually, if we expand this, this is an expanded noun phrase. The rise of accent softening. So the rise is the abstract noun, so it's creating a metaphorical framework. The rise of accent softening, and it's introducing the topic, accents, accent softening. And accent softening, now we could argue that that's softening there. What's happening to the accents? They're being softened. So it's working as a modifier. Okay, and it introduces us to the topic that accent softening is on the rise. That there is, so what could be another word for rise here? That there is an increase in the ways that people are softening, changing their accents. Now, that's exactly what we've seen in the two articles you've just analysed. So this is a common theme, okay? The changing of accents, the changing of the way people speak. So that gives us our topic just by looking and beginning to analyse our sentence function, okay? So, but we've got no verb here. So the rise of accent softening. We've got the colon here to introduce, if this is a phrase, because there is no verb in there, the main clause. Why more and more people are changing their voices. Now, to identify sentence type, we're really thinking about verbs, combination of verbs. So why, not a verb. More, not a verb. And, not a verb. More, not a verb. People, not a verb. Are changing verbs. Now, in this case, though, we've got the are working as a modal verb to create the kind of the progressive, the present progressive, okay, verb form of are changing. So we've got one verb. So that means it can only be a simple sentence. No verbs, minor sentence. Two or more, we'd be determining whether, based on the use of conjunctions or the relationship between clauses, whether it's complex or compound. But we've got one verb phrase. So actually, even though it looks like a long headline, this is a simple declarative headline. And that makes sense for a functional headline, simple declarative. We're giving the information. It introduces the topic, the rise of accent softening, and it expands that topic, why more and more people are changing their voices. So it suggests that this article is going to give us the reasons. It's going to look at the reasons for softening, changing voices, accents, changing the way we speak. Now, there's potentially a hint. It's not an obvious tension, okay? If we're questioning, if we're using the word why, it might be we're looking at the reasons people are changing and whether they're the right reasons. Okay, so what's the topic? Accents, changing the way you speak. What's the potential point of tension? Is that right? Why are people doing it? Should they do it? We're looking at a simple declarative sentence, okay, and it creates a functional headline. Brilliant. We've got, if you wanted some of the other word classes, people. We've got more and more as comparative adjectives. Okay, lovely. So we've got also their voices. So there is a determiner, voices is a noun. So really using voices here as a synonym for accent. So we're not always repeating the same words. Okay, lovely. So next bit. Look at the byline really quick. Who's the writer? Yeah, it's over here, Daniel Lavelle. Now, again, sometimes we've seen bylines that have been more fronted. We've had bylines that use, when we looked at the gender articles, that told us the background, the credentials of a writer. So we know bylines can look different, but here it's a very simple byline. It is literally just the writer's name. So here, remember what comes next? So headline, look, it stands apart. It's in a clear part of the color palette. It's linked to the byline, the writer's name. Now, although we haven't really analysed this, it's part of the section of the online newspaper called Social Trends. Okay, suggesting that it looks at trends in society, things that are happening in society that are on the rise. So what's this bad boy? Why did I just say that? That wasn't necessary. I think it's possibly because I was looking at my naughty cat. Sorry, what's this paragraph? Different color. Now I must admit, to get it onto the page, I've changed the sizing a little bit. What's it? Good. I'll stand first. Okay, so elocution lessons are back in vogue, with many people seeking to disguise their regional accents. But shouldn't we be beyond this now? So my question for you, again, give yourself a couple of minutes. You can press pause on me in a minute. What's the link that you can see between the headline and the stand first? And can you label 3 aspects of the language? So I'm not directing you there. I just want to see, can you label 3 aspects of the language? And can you verbally or just write down a note that explains what the link is between the headline and the stand first? So again, give yourself about 3 minutes, and then we will discuss some of the things that you might have noted. Okay, so let's have a look. So the first thing, why explain a link between the headline and the stand first? Because that's exactly the job the stand first does. It creates a bridge, a link. It kind of is a stepping stone from the headline into the main article. It always stands alone from the main article. It will look different to the main article. It might be a different font, a bigger font size. It might be in bold. It will always visually be discernible as different to the rest of the article. And it does create like a launch pad. It often will expand, reiterate, repeat, or build on ideas from the headline. And it will give us more of a direction of where we're going into the article. Okay, so let's have a little look. Elocution lessons are back in vogue, with many people seeking to disguise their regional accents. But shouldn't we be beyond this now? Okay, so what are some of the links? Okay, good. So we could link elocution lessons. Okay, so look at that opening noun as the subject of the sentence, that opening noun phrase, elocution lessons. Now that links back to the concept of changing voices and accent softening. So we could say this writer's creating a semantic field, a lexical set, all around giving himself different words and phrases to talk about the process of changing the way you speak. So elocutions are the name of the practical place, the practical way that people are changing their speech. They go for elocution lessons. Accent softening is a euphemism. It's presenting the idea of changing the way you speak as a pleasant or as a thing that is seemingly beneficial. It also, that word softening suggests it's only a very subtle change that people are doing. But the verb phrase, are changing their voices, reminds us that actually things are being modified and changed. So those elements all link. So both the headline and the stand first are linking into the idea of people changing the way they speak. And now actually that people are paying somebody or paying for the service of somebody to help them change the way they speak. Okay, so elocutions are back in vogue. So our verb phrase, are back, or the verb phrase to be, are back in vogue. Now, vogue is that lovely word, actually to do with trend, being trendy, being fashionable, being of the moment. So actually that links back to the social trends at the top of the page. Okay, and this idea of a rise in it, the rise of accent softening. So this idea that suddenly it's a much more popular, it's much more in vogue, it's much more on trend, a lot more people are doing it. Brilliant. Now let's look. So that would be, because it's got the verb, elocution lessons are back in vogue, that would be a main clause. But when we've got the comma, which is now linking it to this next clause, okay, to the subordinate clause. Elocution lessons are back in vogue. Now I say that's the main clause because we could put a full stop there and it's a complete idea. The next element wouldn't stand on its own. If this was an independent sentence, it wouldn't make sense. Okay, with many people seeking to disguise their regional accents. So here we've got the repetition of, like, the idea of many links to the idea of more, that a large number of people are being impacted. Okay, now let's look at the verb choices. With many people, what are they doing? Seeking. What are they seeking to do? To disguise. So we've got this subordinate clause here with the verbs being connected, that people are seeking to disguise. What are they looking to disguise? What's the object of this clause? Good, they're regional accents. Now, immediately, that verb choice disguise introduces tension. So it's maintaining across the headline and the stand first the same topic of changing accents. But here the writer is beginning to make word choices that introduces his opinion. So opinion articles will deliberately, intentionally use language that signpost opinion. Okay, because to disguise means what? That you're concealing something, that you're hiding something, that you're disguising something because you don't want it to be found out. You're hiding it because you don't want people to know. So the tension here is that people are choosing to change their regional accent because they want to hide it. Now, when you hide something that suggests, in the context of change, that are you embarrassed? Are you ashamed? Why are you disguising? Why are you hiding who you are? Why are you pretending to be something you're not? So the verb choice, seeking to disguise, introduces more of that tension. It makes it more explicit that this change isn't necessarily seen as a good thing. It's being motivated by a desire to hide or conceal something. So in other words, to become somebody you're not. And the regional accents. Okay, so when we start thinking about issues, regional accents. So we've been set up with this dichotomy again, with this tension between two different ways of speaking. We've got the immediate identification of regional accents on one side, on their versus side, if you like. So something versus regional accents. Regional accents here being used as an umbrella term for non-standard accents or accents that might be found in different parts of the country. Okay, so we could talk about that noun choice. Then we get the full stop. So we know it's a declarative because it begins with the subject, ends with a full stop. It's a complex declarative. And then look at this lovely but, and then this question mark. So in this stand first, then we have the declarative that leads into the question. Now that device, a declarative that leads into a question, is very clever because it creates the bridge into the main article because we have to read on to answer the question. But it also makes tension clear. So it says, but shouldn't we be beyond this now? Now I love this. So but, so you got your coordinating conjunction right at the beginning of this sentence, which make us think this has got to be either a compound noun or a complex sentence. Also, this is a non-standard feature. If we were teaching you proper grammar, you never begin a sentence with but journalists actually use this technique a lot for emphatic stress. They use it as a deliberate hinge point. They take us with that but in a different direction. We've then got the modal, should. So it could, but couldn't we be beyond that now? But mustn't we? But shouldn't we? So actually, should is one of those modals that creates a very strong emphatic stress. So this person is about to lead us into an opinion that they feel strongly about, but shouldn't we? Lovely use of the first person collective pronoun. So identification of his opinion, of Daniel's opinion, but that universalizing, other people should agree with me, but shouldn't we be beyond, so there's our next verb phrase, be beyond this now? But shouldn't we be beyond this now? Shouldn't we have moved forward from this? So what's this that we should have moved forward from? Changing accents, changing voices, modifying the way we speak. We don't yet know from this article the reasons for what we've changed or why, but definitely a very clear tension. So we've got a lovely example here when we're thinking about our own writing. A simple functional headline, but actually using the stand first then to make our point of tension really clear. And actually what we want to achieve in those opening three elements, headline, byline, stand first, is that we want to establish that initial perspective, that initial point of view. We want it to be established as either being positive, negative, or ambivalent. So actually, our writer seemingly starts off ambivalent. In other words, the headline doesn't immediately show us what he thinks, whether he thinks this process is negative or positive. But actually, by the end of the stand first, he has, if you like, revealed his opinion. We get the revelation of his opinion. Shouldn't we be beyond this now? He's questioning why people are changing their accents. He believes we should be beyond this now. We should be beyond the of modifying, changing how we speak in order to please or appease or to get ahead. Okay, brilliant. So for us then, using some of those ideas, we're now going to be thinking about our opinion article. Okay, so we're going to remind ourselves of some of the elements that involves, okay, and how we first of all hit that part of the criteria for the journalistic aspects of the mark scheme. So we've seen that we can create headlines using various devices. Okay, now I mean when we say seen, not just today, we've seen today an example of a functional declarative headline. But you, when we start to think and plan, just need to decide that your headline is going to either be functional or creative. It could be a combination of an interrogative, exclamatory, declarative, or imperative. We're going to write a stand first. Now, again, we've processed or practiced this in that starter. We understand that the stand first should anchor and expand the headline. It should create a bridge between the headline and the main article. You will see repetition of keywords and or synonyms of those keywords, so creating that semantic field across the headline and the stand first. It might define, explain, but it definitely will focus us on the topic and the tension. Now, our byline today was simply a name, but we can show our own creativity. We can go for a name plus an expansion, in other words, credentials, foregrounding, so that you're a language enthusiast, you're an expert. And we've sometimes seen that the name, the byline, can be embedded as part of the stand first. It can be introduced into the stand first. Okay, so how we choose to build our articles today, we're going to make sure that we hit that headline, stand first, and byline. Now, the bit we need is to make sure that we've got 5 ideas and issues to be directly addressed from the 2 articles we've read. So again, what I'm going to ask you to do, okay, oh, she says, yes, you are, is just to use our notes, to use your 2 copies of the articles and the notes we've made to come up with your own list of 5 ideas and issues. Now, the reason it needs to be your list of 5 ideas and issues is that we're looking for autonomy, we're looking for confidence. I'm going to just show you where you can look for the information, but then I'm going to ask you to pause and to give yourself probably about 10 minutes to get 5 ideas and issues. Now, I know it's the magic of the screens, so I'm just going to look back. She says, let's just see if I do it this way. Actually, it might make it quicker. Oh, look, it looks really dramatic now. But so where do you look for your issues? Reread the articles and think to yourself, I need to come up with 5 issues, 5 ideas from those articles. Now, you could do it quite functionally just to get the job done. So you could go there and you say, there's an issue. Some British people are shy about the way they speak. So you could write down issue number 1. Some British people are shy about the way they speak. Okay, so you could just look through the articles, issue from this one. An idea is that received pronunciation is the gold standard. Modified RP is being presented as the best way to speak. So you can just, in a minute, press pause, look at your articles again and the notes you've made on the articles and get your 5 ideas and issues. The other things you can use, we did lessons where we actually have summarized the issues already. So if you've got these notes, these are some of the issues. Now you'll see text A, there's 5 issues there. Text B, there's 5 issues there. We're only looking, oh, I've gone too far, sorry. We're only looking for 5 ideas or issues from across your articles. Okay, so from across both. Now it could be the name of somebody from within one of the articles. I think in the first article, the Canadian article, it references a guy called Nathaniel, I can't say the surname, who is somebody that works in voice coaching. So he could be a name that you reference. You could just write down ideas, issues to be addressed from the article. So you could just write number 1, refer to Nathaniel and his ideas. So it's just, if you remember, that we are intentionally making sure that we're going to hit the mark scheme for showing that we've read and addressed some of the issues from the articles, and we're going to just plan to use 5. We might not use all 5, but we're intentionally going to create anchor points to do so. So as I said, that's going to maybe take you I know I'm generous, maybe 10 minutes, but a bit of time just to get down your issues. Okay? And then when we come back together, we're going to think about the peg element. So when we come back, I expect you to have 5 ideas or issues from the 2 articles that you're going to deal with. Okay? Okay, so the next bit of addressing that journalistic part of the mark scheme, the AO5, writing creatively like a journalist, is, you know what this picture means, we need some pegs. Okay, so we've looked at this before, so this is a quick recap, okay? We want to plan to use an arresting and extended metaphor. That's going to create the bridge that threads through the whole article. It's going to give significance to what we're writing about, and it's going to create cohesion. We might choose to use dramatization, where we tell someone else's story or link to a real world event, again, giving the topic significance and relevance. Now, this is potentially going to be a way in for us because we're writing an opinion article. We might be anecdotal. We might plan to use a short personal story to connect to the issue. Okay, now these can be both entertaining and informative. They invest the topic with what we call significance and relevant as it's making it real. We're going to plan potentially to use some popular culture references. So can we identify any icons, events drawn from TV, film, social media, etc., where somebody maybe has changed the way they speak? Can we offer a way in for non-specialists? Okay, that's what popular cultural references do. It creates a way in. It creates a shared point of reference and knowledge, and it can cross over to a metaphor and to our dramatization. We're going to think about some high culture references. In other words, references to icons, events, and ideas drawn from high culture, such as the theatre, darling, opera, literature. And we're going to make sure that we have a clear perception. This means it's referring to the way in which the topic is looked at, the lens through which we see the topic. Now, our perception has to be that of an opinion article. Now, the immediate thing I want you to write down for perception is, if it's an opinion article, it's going to be a personal perception. You are going to be looking through this topic in a very clearly personal and opinionized way. So in order to help us think about these areas, I just want you to really quickly, I don't know how you're working, whether you write things down on paper, whether you're printing things off. I just want you to get these headings written down because we're going to do a bit of work together to help us kind of like tick off that we've planned for each of these. Now, a popular culture reference at note form would fit really nicely in that kind of size gap, but it might be that we do a little bit of research. It might be that we find some information out. Now, it could be that we use dramatization, that we tell someone else's real story, and we look at real world events. Now, if we just stay on this page just for a minute. Now, I am multi-referencing. So my expectation is I know you might have to pause and look back. But if we look across these, is there anything that we've already seen that we can magpie... Miss Deutsch, no, steal, magpie, from the text that you've already analysed. So I'm just going to have to do this. It just means we can make some notes on here. Now, if we go to the arresting metaphor, okay, in the article that is the tutor pages, they do use a metaphor for RP. What's the metaphor they use for RP? They call it the gold standard. Now, this means we could magpie, we could use that idea. Okay, they've used the arresting, the extended metaphor of gold standard of RP. Now, similarly in that one, okay, they talk about somebody by name. Now, she is famous. She is a bit of an icon. But they tell someone else's story very briefly. They tell the story of an MP who changed the way they spoke. Who did they mention? She was the only female Prime Minister, girls. Good. They talk about Margaret Thatcher. Oh, sorry, guys. Trying to be too quick. They talk about Margaret Thatcher. So sometimes when we're populating and planning our pegs, we can read back and we can have a look. So just to kind of show you, so let's have a quick look. So we've got the gold standard one, we've nicked that one. much more acceptable, dynamic language. Most people have an opinion about various accents across the country. There's a common acceptance that regional accents reflect a particular person's standing. RP is still expected with many national institutions, Church of England, legal professions, Parliament. Politicians often take coaching lessons. Margaret Thatcher, we've done that. Whether born in the UK or abroad, learning English as a second language or mellowing an accent and polishing delivery, we can make it more understandable and better received with a great way of progressing within both the industrial and in domestic environment. It can be useful to adopt the local patois in order to assist or encourage a particular outcome. And it is the recognition of this and the ability to develop our speech that will move us from the shop floor to the boardroom. Allow the way you speak to give you the control to change your life. Now, we could argue that move us from the shop floor to the boardroom is also a metaphor. Shop floor to the okay. Now, so then if we want real quick, so what we're doing, what are we doing? We're using the two articles that we've analysed to just see. Now, also what this doubles up as, this would count as making references to the ideas and issues in the other texts. So accent shy Britons anxious to talk posh. Tough economic times have prompted many Britons to seek out some unusual help in order to get ahead. Elocution lessons. Calls to company offering speech tutors have soared in recent years. Now, this is what we call dramatization. This is referencing a real world event. Calls to company offering speech tutors have soared. Private speech tutors have popped up by the dozens, offering a range of courses for children and adults. These modern day versions of Professor Henry Higgins, the fictional linguist who taught Eliza Doolittle in an upper crust accent in My Fair Lady, belie the notion that Britain is moving away. If anything, today's economic slowdown has proven that both remain entrenched. It's a class statement. Here he is, Nathaniel McCullough, who runs Simply Learning Tuition. So we could take Nathaniel McCullough as reference to a real world event. And also they mention it, I was just getting us here for number 2. It mentions My Fair Lady, a musical in which a working class woman is taught to speak like an upper class woman, so people will believe she's upper class. Now, we have looked at Eliza Doolittle in year 12. She's quite a common metaphor reference. So let's just have a little think then. So over here we've got, oh gosh, guys, I'm just going to call him Muck. I'll change that in a minute, okay? Because if I'm going back too far, we'll lose our timings. So we've got Nathaniel MC. Okay, now it's very difficult because some people would say My Fair Lady is, when it was released into the theatre, was a high culture reference, but then it became made into a popular musical. So we're going to say My Fair Lady. And Henry Higgins. Okay, so again, we're just starting to populate our pegs. Now, again, it doesn't mean we're going to use all of these. What it does mean is that we're giving ourselves options. Okay, so let's just, I've gone over the size there. Just going to make it so we can add to it, guys, okay? So we're beginning to populate our peg bank with ideas. Now, again, to help us do that a little bit more effectively, we're just going to look at what peg this writer is using and how we can then use it in our own. So we've looked at the headline and the stand first of that new article by Daniel Levine. What's he doing in this first opening paragraph? I feel that this award was not made to me as a man, but to my work, a life's work in the agony and sweat of the human spirit, not for glory and least of all for profit, but to create out of the materials of the human spirit something which did not exist before. As I read this extract from William Faulkner's Nobel Prize acceptance speech, I hand a plastic spoon to my voice coach every time I arrive at an important word. So guys, which peg is the writer using there out of our peg bank? Good. It's anecdotal as I read this extract. So we know as well, just going to pause then, that we can use the phrase as I. We can be anecdotal. Okay, we can use a story. Now, this is where we have to be creative. You are lovely young 17, 18-year-old girls. Your anecdotal bank for talking about speech discrimination and issues towards accent is possibly smaller than mine. Yeah. So we will have to be creative. Now, to help us do that, okay, we're just going to look at, sorry, it's a little bit, ways that we can think about anecdotes. So I'm just going to press pause. Sorry, and take us to the next section on anecdotes. Sorry, guys, my slides were out of order. That threw me a little bit. My apologies. Okay, so really what I just want to draw attention to here is the different ways that we can use anecdotes, and just ask you to kind of have a bit of creative play, trying to create 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of anecdotal openings. So a domestic anecdote. Okay, an anecdote about your home life, about your personal life. Now, if we look at the phrase as I, okay, so as I sit at my kitchen table, as I was driving, for my 1 hour, as I was driving out for my 1 hour a day of exercise, I turned the radio on. Now, what we want to really lead into from these anecdotes is the connection between your personal experience and the topic of accents and issues towards accents. So we may be, and again, this is like my dad always inspires this example. Every time I see my dad, who lives in kind of like self-imposed isolation, he's a bit of a hermit in the wilds of Ivybridge. As soon as I turn up to visit him, he wants to tell me about something he's heard on the radio. He hears everything on the radio, but I think it's become his euphemism. If he wants to tell me his opinion, but because it's a controversial one, rather than just say Amy, ... he says, oh, I listened to a man on the radio. So, but it's a really nice example of actually an anecdotal, domestic anecdote that can really quickly be used to link into a topic. So as I was driving to work, a man on the radio, or I was listening to Channel 4, and a man on the radio said, or they were interviewing a man on the radio. They were interviewing, as I was listening to the radio, as I prepared, as I got ready for my morning, Nathaniel McCulloch was being interviewed on Radio 4. He was trying to explain the rise in numbers of people using his elocution services. And it got me thinking, ... So in a minute, I'm going to ask you to pause. And for each of these, I'm just going to verbally explain. So you're listening. Okay. I want you to create the anecdote, okay, sentence. Now it's going to be a ... sentence, really, because we will create it to an idea and an issue in a minute. So the anecdote that's domestic, something to do with your personal life. As I was driving my children to school, as I was getting ready for work, as I was sat at my kitchen table, as I was listening to my favorite Channel 4 program, so you're just, and as I. Now, the other way with domestics is you can use the yesterday, last night, last weekend. So we want, though, domestic anecdotes. They have to be clearly linked to your personal life. Okay, so things you do at home, things you do in your personal life, getting ready for the day, waking up, it's the weekend. As I was reading the weekend newspapers, that's a very middle-class anecdote, isn't it? As I was reading the weekend newspapers, I came across an article about the rise of accents. And then that's an easy way as well to integrate a reference to one of the two articles you've just read. Okay, so that's what I mean by domestic. So you're going to write an anecdotal sentence that links to your home, to your personal life. So what's a professional one? One that comes through a world of work. So as I attended teacher training, as I was sitting in a professional development training session, as I was being, what's that word? Induction. As I was going, as I was inducted into my new job, as I was undergoing staff training, as I was being trained, ... at work, So when we talk about professional, it's a link to a work-based experience. Now, the easiest way to fake a work-based experience is that actually, if you look back at all the articles we've analysed and some of the issues around accent and social issues, is that people really do believe that their accents are detrimental to their job prospects, that in some way, the way they speak is holding them back. So it could be something like, as I undertook training for my new job, I was shocked when my supervisor advised me that I might want to tone down my Plymouth Jannerisms. Or as I was undergoing training to become a teacher, I was shocked that I was advised to lose my Plymouthian accent. Okay, so there's a professional. So really, historical and contemporary. Historical anecdotes are just things that happened in your past. Yeah, so if I'm sat here today as a 41-year-old, oh no, that's a lie. I think I'm 42-year-old. I've been teaching for many years. So a historical anecdote for me could be, when I think back to the teacher training I received 20 years ago, we were told that the most important thing that we would bring to any classroom was ourselves. So I was shocked when I read that teacher trainees today are being pressurized into changing the way they speak in order to get a job. Surely not. So that's a historical anecdote. So when you do a historical anecdote, I'm not going to lie, you're going to have to maybe say last year or a year ago, but you could say something, and this is when they start to overlap. So you could have a historical domestic or a historical professional. So, a year ago, I remember having a heated debate around the kitchen table about whether or not people should be hired or fired based on the way they speak. There you go, historical reference, watching The Apprentice. So during the last series of when the Apprentice first launched X amount of years ago, not one of the candidates represented a strong working class background, but Lord Alan Sugar did, with his clear kind of Cockney accent. He represented somebody that was incredibly successful, who never caved to the pressure to change his accent. And then what I've done is I've started with a historical anecdote, but then I've begun to link it to a cultural reference, to a popular reference. Now, contemporary just means that it's a modern anecdote. So actually with these, I'm going to say you could do three. I want a domestic anecdote and a professional anecdote, and then one that combines either historical or contemporary. Okay, so that's what you're going to do for your anecdotes, and you're going to have time to do that. Now, the next bit that you're going to have time to do, and I'm just nervous if I somehow mucked up the order of my slides, so I think we need to go back, is over here. So the next bit that I would like you to do, I'm going to give you time to do today for popular high culture references, is I want you to research people. Now, by popular culture, I've given you a clue, Lord Alan Sugar. Can you find any references to icons, celebrities who have changed the way they've spoken? Now, that could be, now we need to know more than just their name. If we're going to use it in an article, we need to know name, but we also need to know why they changed and what they changed from and to. So, okay, I've given you Lord Alan Sugar. So Lord Alan Sugar actually represents somebody that is hugely successful. He's been knighted. He's an entrepreneur. He's made extortionate amounts of money, and he has never changed his accent. He's always maintained his accent that reflects his kind of Cockney background. So you might want to look, where did Lord Alan Sugar grow up in London? So you're not just roughly making a terrible stereotypical assumption like me, Cockney background. And there's popular culture reference. The other ones, look for the footballers. There was a famous footballer who changed the way he spoke. There was somebody from The Only Way is Essex. If you look into newspaper articles for Prince William and Kate Middleton and have they changed their accent, you'll be surprised what you find. So popular culture references, I want you to find at least 3 examples, okay, of people who have changed the way they speak. And for high culture reference, now I'm only going to give you, this is going to send you on a little bit of a hunt. I want you to find me the Shakespearean character who says, "You have taught me your language, and now I'm going to use it to curse you." Now that was very paraphrased, but look for the Shakespearean character who uses his language to curse those that have taught him, and see if you can find him for our high culture reference. Okay, so your job today: popular culture, high culture, and a perception. Your anecdotal pegs. Yeah. Now, the rest of the writing part that we're going to do together next lesson, we're going to have all that information. But sorry, I did want to say, these guys. Okay, sorry, I know I was jumping around there because I just want you to be ready next lesson. We also need to be thinking about how familiar you are with these guys: Howard Giles, William Laboff, Leslie Milroy, and Basil Bernstein. So the other part that I want you to use your time today to do is to look through your notes, because I'd rather you were honest. I'd rather you say, Miss, I've got no memory of Bernstein, but I've got really good notes on Giles and Laboff. Miss, I've got nothing on Milroy, but I've got lots on Laboff. So again, I would like you to look through your notes. So a bit of time today to do some research, a bit of time today to look into these theories and concepts. Now, you'll know whether your notes are good enough if you're able to do this, if you're able to tell me who, what, and when they were working, and what attitudes towards speech and accent that they illustrate. Okay, so when we're back together, we'll start with populating this table. Okay, making sure you know who these guys are. We'll look at your anecdotes and we'll look at your research. Okay.